I want you to just picture a resume in your head for a second.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Just visualize a single sheet of paper. And at the top, under education, you see a law degree obtained in 2024.
Which is pretty standard, for a lawyer.
Right, but then under skills, you've got classical piano, specifically a Carnegie Hall performance.
Oh, wow.
You also have full stack coding and HTML. And then, right under work history, you see a decade-long career as one of the most famous faces in the global adult entertainment industry.
I mean, if I saw that resume on a desk, I would just assume pages from like 3 completely different applicants got stapled together by accident.
Exactly. It just doesn't compute. It completely breaks the algorithm. But today we are doing a deep dive into the source material on the life of the one person who actually lived that resume.
Jessica Steinhauser.
Yes, known to most of the world as Asia Carrera. And looking at the stack of sources we have in front of us, I mean, the word roller coaster doesn't even begin to cover it.
It's more like a series of distinct lives lived by a single consciousness.
Yeah.
Because we are looking at a story that involves an IQ of 156, a membership in Mensa,
A really tragic widowhood.
right, a felony arrest, and then this massive redemption arc that literally ends in a cap and gown.
It is honestly one of the most baffling and just fascinating character studies we've ever tackled here.
For sure.
Because the mission for this deep dive isn't just to gawk at the sensational headlines, and there are plenty of them in the sources.
Yeah.
Our mission is to really understand the mechanics of this kind of life. Like, how does someone go from being a heavily pressured prodigy to an adult film icon to a headline-making activist and finally to a lawyer?
And how do they survive it? Because that's the question that just kept popping up for me as I went through the research.
Mhm.
This whole thing is a story about survival, radical reinvention, and just an absolute refusal to be put in a box.
So let's rewind the tape. To understand the lawyer and to understand the star, we have to understand the child first.
Well-
This starts in New York City, 1973. Born to a German mother and a Japanese father, and raised in Little Silver, New Jersey.
And right away, the sources really highlight the environment of that upbringing.
Yeah.
This was not a, go play outside and come back for dinner kind of childhood.
Definitely not.
The term tiger parent is used quite a bit in the biographical notes. She was the eldest of 4, and the pressure to perform wasn't just high, it was stratospheric.
We're talking about a level of achievement that makes most overachievers look lazy. She was a classical piano prodigy.
And we aren't talking about winning the local school talent show.
No, she played Carnegie Hall twice.
Before the age of 15. I mean, think about the discipline required for that. The hours on the bench. The isolation that comes with that level of intense practice.
Yeah, it's wild.
And she wasn't just doing music. Academically, she was absolutely crushing it. She was a National Merit Scholar, a Garden State Scholar. Her SAT scores were
Over 1440. And there's this one detail in the sources that I actually had to double check because it sounded fake. At age 16, she was teaching English at a college in Japan.
That is correct. Suruga College. It really speaks to that IQ of 1 of 56 we mentioned earlier. She had this incredible processing power.
But she was still a kid.
Right. That is the crucial context. You have a brain that functions at a genius level, but you are living in a pressure cooker where your entire worth is tied to your performance.
Which is pretty much a recipe for a massive rebellion. And that is exactly what happened. The sources say she ran away from home at age 17. She just broke.
It's the first major pivot point we see. She goes from this highly structured, intense existence to being completely on her own.
Though she did try to stick to the plan at first.
You did, yeah. She initially tried to follow the approved script. She got a full scholarship to Rutgers University, majoring in Japanese and business. She was really trying to make it work.
But the reality of being a teenage runaway is that it's expensive. You have to survive. And this is where the story shifts into the chapter she is most famous for.
The industry.
Yes, she drops out of Rutgers. And the way she enters the adult film industry is very Asia Carrera. It wasn't an accident or a moment of desperation.
No, the sources frame it as an arbitrage play. That's how I read it.
Right.
She looked at her situation, she was broke, she was on her own, and she had certain assets.
Right.
She realized that entering the adult entertainment world was a rational economic decision. She calculated she could make significant wealth much faster there than working a minimum wage job or even exotic dancing.
So in 1993, right around age 20, she enters the business. She adopts the stage name Asia Carrera. Fun fact from the sources, the name was a nod to the actress Tia Carrere.
But she changed the spelling.
Yeah, she changed the spelling to avoid getting sued.
Showing that prudent legal thinking even back then.
Exactly. And she didn't just participate in adult cinema, she absolutely dominated it. She became the first Asian performer to win the AVN Female Performer of the Year award in 1995.
And for you listening, if you aren't familiar with that world, that is essentially the Best Actress Oscar for films for mature audiences.
The pinnacle.
Right. She was inducted into both the AVN and XRCO Halls of Fame. She had over 400 credits. But what interests me the most is how she succeeded.
Her branding.
Exactly. She didn't try to be the standard vixen character. She actively avoided that boring stigma. She carved out a very specific niche as the gorgeous intellectual.
The smart one.
Yes. And she leveraged that heavily. We have to remember the era here. This is the mid-90s. The internet is basically the Wild West. Most people are still figuring out what email is.
And Asia Carrera is teaching herself HTML.
Yes. She built her own website, asiacarrera.com, entirely by hand.
Which is massive when you think about the business model of that era. In the 90s, the power in that industry lay entirely with the studios. They owned the distribution, the VHS tapes, the contracts.
But by building her own website, she completely circumvented the gatekeepers. She created a direct line to her fan base. She controlled her own digital presence and her monetization.
She was basically a creator before the creator economy even existed.
Absolutely. She was even writing guest reviews for Maximum PC magazine. She was reviewing hardware and video games.
Tapping into the geek culture.
Right as it was exploding. It made her relatable in a way that other performers just weren't. She wasn't just a fantasy on a screen. She was the cool girl who could fix your computer.
It's genius business acumen. But, as we see in the timeline, she eventually decides to close that chapter. In 2003, she retires from the industry.
She marries a nutritionist and author named Don Lemon.
And for a while, it really looks like she's got the fairy tale ending.
This is her domestic chapter. She leaves Los Angeles, leaves the industry behind, and moves to St. George, Utah. Now pause for a second and just consider that culture shock.
Oh, man.
You are going from the absolute center of the adult entertainment world to a deeply conservative religious community in Utah.
Talk about a pivot. But she committed to it. They started a family. They had a daughter, Catalina, in 2005. She was pregnant with their second child, Devin. She was really settling down.
And then comes June 2006, the event that changes everything.
The car accident? Her husband, Don Lemon, is killed in a crash. Asia is 7 months pregnant at the time.
It is a complete nightmare scenario. You are a widow, you have a toddler, you are about to give birth, and you are living in a place where you are culturally very isolated. The psychological load there is just crushing.
And the sources are very honest about what happened next. She didn't just bounce back, she spiraled.
She did. And I think it's important we look at this with empathy, but also clarity. She struggled with severe alcoholism and grief for nearly a decade.
Yeah.
There's a mention in the sources of a third child born in 2012 who was placed for adoption, which is a heartbreaking detail that indicates just how unmanageable things had become for her.
It all culminates a few years later. We'll get to a slightly funny story in a second, but the darkest moment hits in 2015. This is the rock bottom. She was arrested for a DUI, and the details are scary.
She was found asleep in her car near her daughter's school.
With a blood alcohol content of 0.254.
0.254.
That is more than 3 times the legal limit.
For many people, that is approaching a comatose state. The fact that she was operating a vehicle suggests a very high, very dangerous tolerance born of chronic addiction.
It resulted in house arrest. But looking back at the timeline, that arrest seems to be the circuit breaker. It forced a hard stop. It led to sobriety and Alcoholics Anonymous.
It was the moment she had to choose.
Yeah.
Does the story end here, or is there another act?
And as we know, there was another act. But before we get to the law school redemption, we have to talk about the colander.
Oh, we definitely have to talk about the colander.
This actually happened in 2014, so a bit before the DUI arrest, during those really dark years. But it gives us such a brilliant glimpse into her mind. She made international headlines for her driver's license photo.
She did. For context, Utah, like most places, bans hats in ID photos, unless they're for religious purposes.
So Asia Carrera goes to the DMV with a metal pasta strainer on her head, a literal colander.
And she claims it is her religious headwear as a Pastafarian, which is a member of the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster.
Which, according to our sources, is a satirical movement designed to critique the privileging of religious beliefs in public policy. She was a very vocal atheist.
Right. The hosts of this deep dive aren't taking a stance on the religious debate there, but notice the intellect at work.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Even in the midst of her personal struggles, she is making a constitutional argument. She's challenging the state. She's essentially saying, if you allow religious headwear, you must allow my religious headwear or you are discriminating.
When she won, they let her keep the photo.
They did. It was funny, yes.
Yeah.
But it was also a very sharp critique of the system. It showed that the smart kid from New Jersey was still in there, questioning authority and using logic to poke holes in the rules, even in a conservative state like Utah.
So she makes her point at the DMV. A year later, she hits rock bottom with the DUI, she gets sober. And then she decides to go back to school. And of course, she doesn't do this halfway.
No. She enrolls at Utah Tech University, formerly Dixie State. She graduates magna cum laude in psychology in 2019. But the detail from the sources that really stuck with me is who she went to school with.
Her daughter.
Yes. Remember that high IQ gene pool? It turns out her daughter, Catalina, is a prodigy as well. Catalina enrolled in college at age 11.
Wait, 11?
11. So you have this incredible image of the mother, a former adult film star recovering from addiction, and her 11-year-old daughter both attending university classes at the same time.
That is just a movie waiting to happen. It's such a powerful statement on parenting, too. Despite everything Asia went through, the grief, the addiction, she clearly prioritized education for her kids.
Absolutely. And Asia kept going. After the bachelor's, she went to Texas A&M for a master's in education, and I really want to highlight her specialization there. She focused on autism spectrum disorders.
Why that specific field, did the sources say?
The sources note that Asia herself has been diagnosed with autism, ADHD, and anxiety, and her children also have needs in that neurodivergent space. So, true to form, she didn't just want to deal with it. She wanted to master the science of it. She turned her personal neurodivergence into an academic specialization.
It's that pattern again, intellectualizing a struggle to overcome it. But she still wasn't done.
The final boss level, law school.
The Juris Doctor. She enrolls at St. Mary's University School of Law, and in May 2024, she walks across the stage. The commencement program lists her as Jessica Asia Steinhauser.
And we have to pause on the sheer difficulty of this. Law school is grueling for 22-year-olds with absolutely no baggage. Imagine doing it in your late 40s.
Yeah.
Imagine walking to a classroom knowing that every student there can pull out their phone, search your name, and see your entire history in adult cinema.
This stigma must have been so intense.
It had to be. But she faced it. There's a profound resilience in that. She refused to let her past dictate her future credentials. She wanted to prove, perhaps to herself or maybe to the world, that she could conquer the most traditional, rigorous intellectual path there is.
It's deeply ironic, isn't it? She ran away at 17 specifically to avoid becoming a doctor or a lawyer. She spent 30 years doing literally everything else. Fame, infamy, tech, motherhood, addiction. And then she circles back and becomes a lawyer anyway.
The destination is the same, but the journey changed the meaning entirely. When she was 17, it would have been compliance. In 2024, it was agency. It was her choice.
Right.
And she brings a perspective to the law that no traditional student could possibly have.
She understands contracts from the perspective of the talent. She understands the criminal justice system from the perspective of a defendant who is on house arrest. She understands disability law from her own diagnoses.
She is a polymath in the truest sense. She has lived a dozen lives.
So when we look at all these sources, what is the big takeaway from this deep dive? Because it's very easy to get distracted by the sensational parts, the adult film career, the colander, the 11-year-old college student. But what's the core message?
For me, it's about the refusal to be static. Society loves to label people. You are the smart kid. You are the adult performer. You are the addict.
Yeah.
And usually, once you get a label like adult performer or felon, society tells you that is your label forever. You're done. Your story is written.
And she just burned the labels.
Repeatedly. She proves that a human life can have multiple, completely contradictory acts. Just because Act 2 is chaotic or tragic doesn't mean Act 3 can't be triumphant. It's a lesson in neuroplasticity, not just of the brain, but of the self.
It really challenges you to look at people differently. You see a mugshot or you see an old video online and you think you know the whole story, but you don't know if that person is on their way to law school.
Exactly. And it's a reminder that intelligence is a tool that can be applied in any direction. She applied it to the piano, then to the business model of the industry, then to coding, then to survival, and finally to the law. The engine was always the exact same, only the track changed.
It's easily one of the most unique American lives we've ever studied. from Carnegie Hall to the AVN Hall of Fame to a jail cell to a Juris Doctor.
And honestly, knowing her track record, I wouldn't be surprised if there's an Act 4.
Judge Steinhauser.
I wouldn't bet against her. And if she does become a judge, I really hope she hangs that colander right there in her chambers.
That would be fitting, just to keep everyone on their toes. But it leaves you with something to think about. What labels are you carrying right now, given to you by other people, that are completely fictional? Because if Asia Carrera can rewrite her story that many times, maybe the rest of us are playing it a little too safe.
Absolutely.
Well, that's our deep dive on the incredible, improbable life of Asia Carrera, a story about breaking rules, hitting rock bottom, and climbing back up the mountain with a law degree in hand.
Thanks for listening.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.